we'll put the PowerPoint on. I'm going to introduce the topic in this case. So Walter Russell, when he passed in 1963, was described on the CBS Evening News by Walter Cronkite as the American Leonardo da Vinci. Why Walter Russell is not better known is beyond me. He had an amazing life. He was a polymath. I believe he only had an 8th grade education, and he was an expert in all sorts of things, not the least of which was chemistry. He was kind of discovered by Mark Twain. There was a group called the Twilight Society, in which it was like a salon like we're having right now. And there were notables in this salon, including Mark Twain, and Twain discovered a young Walter Russell. I think he was only like 20 years old, 18 to 20 years old. He then became an architect. He was a painter. He was a sculptor. His bust of FDR is one of the most famous of the presidential busts. He added, I think, 8 elements to the periodic table. There's a picture right here in Steve's office that I had framed for him because it's Russell's depiction of the periodic chart, and it's more like a spiral than what we learned in, well, I haven't had chemistry since high school, but it's a different depiction of the elements. He experienced spontaneous enlightenment. I think he was about 40 years old when that happened. And he wrote 2 classic books that anyone who is interested in cosmology, esoterica, your studies would be incomplete if you didn't read these books. One is The Secret of Life. I'm sorry, The Secret of Light. And the other book is, what is the other famous book? I thought I had it written down here. I don't have it written down here. He started a school. He saw that human evolution was becoming outpaced by technology. He was a visionary in addition to all his other gifts. And so he started a school called the University of Science and Philosophy. He founded it in 1948 with his wife, Leo Russell. By that time, they had moved to Swannanoa Palace, which is just outside of Charlottesville. And while they did conduct classes there, they designed the school as a home study course. So I think I'm going to stop there. I unfortunately did discover Russell, but too late. I was at UVA, and I would have loved to have met Leo Russell was still alive at that point. Tom, what do you want to add before we go into the PowerPoint that Jim gave us? What would you like to add about the Russells and Swannanoa?
Well, one thing I remember from their stories, when they were looking for a place, Lau and Walter, for a place to have their center, they wanted it to be a center. So Lau sort of had the idea that this would be a Christ consciousness center. So they had traveled all the way to the West Coast, and they're traveling back to the East Coast by car. And they get to going up from Waynesboro, going up the mountain. And she says, "This is it. It's at the top of this road." And they eventually got to that, the palace. It was already there. It was built years before by, was that a man from Richmond? I don't know if he was a railroad man or how he had his money, but he built this place. And so somehow they got a lease on it for 50 years. And it had that, supposedly, for people who are aware of a Christ energy, they say it is there, or was there anyway. So that's one little story anyway, but he also was an ice skater. The guy could do anything he decided to do. He did it 110%. and he became a national champion ice skating, figure skater. And his sculptures, if you go to the museum in Waynesboro, you'll see that they're just magnificent. The Mark Twain sculpture and all of them, he just would decide to do something, and he would work for perfection and do it. So if you were on the PowerPoint, maybe I'll think of something else about him.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I'm thinking that Jim's going to cover stuff in the PowerPoint that you and I have not mentioned yet. The only other thing I want to mention before we look at the PowerPoint is that he was a contemporary of Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla and corresponded with both of them. He also was rumored to have created a zero-point energy machine. And when he died, Tom might know this story better than I, the black cars were coming up the Swananoa driveway and trying to haul things off. So many people, there's a legend that the government took his invention, just like Tesla was raided, that Walter Russell also, his notes and his inventions were raided and taken. Do you know more about that story, Tom?
I have heard that story, and just a few years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, someone who knew a woman who had lived in the house right by where the driveway goes in to the palace area, who was not connected with Swananoa, she wanted to have me look at a manuscript she had about all the people she saw come there. Important people, presidents and the black cars, and I didn't help get that book going forward. It didn't seem to have a basis to it that people would believe. Anyway, so I have heard that story, yes. Katie, could you let me share my screen a second?
I believe you can.
His other famous book just came to me. It's called The Universal One. That's his other very famous book.
Let's see. Oh. All right, just a second. I have a reason for this. There, you see it? Am I sharing?
Yeah.
That's Walter Russell. And that's one of the books that Laura was talking about. The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe. And I don't know when that photo was taken later in his life, and it's a small book that someone wrote about him. So if you are interested, that's one. So I just wanted to show that. But it happens I have a few other slides about him because I was supposed to give a talk at the museum September, and couldn't at the last minute, couldn't do it, and because of COVID. But I was actually talking about simulations and artificial intelligence, and what Walter had to say about that too. So anyway, that isn't necessarily relevant here, but this book, I moved from New Hampshire, where my wife and I had lived the previous 20 years. We moved to Charlottesville in 1999. And 2 months before we were moving, I had a dream where I saw this man, the man that's on the cover. And I had never heard of Walter Russell. And I was in a classroom, and he was standing up front, and he had a pointer in his hand, and he pointed it at my head and said, "Tom, the two systems are isotopes of each other. You got it?" And I had been writing about parallel universes and all that. You know, I don't know a lot about it, but I was writing about it. So I didn't think much about it. I remembered the dream. And after we arrived in Charlottesville, I was at a meeting, and someone had this book on the table, And I said, I saw that guy in a dream. He looks like Colonel Sanders, but that's the man. And so I told this woman what he had told me in the dream. And she said, oh, that was Walter. Walter always used a pointer. And, we want you to see his sculpture. So they took me to a house in Waynesboro to see all of that. But that was my introduction to him. So I've kind of paid attention to see what I can learn from him. And most of what he writes, I can't understand. But anyway, Jim does. But so that I just want to say that much. And now, Laura, I should unshare.
Tell me, Tom, before we start Jim's PowerPoint, this was a PowerPoint you had prepared to do at the USP Museum on, what was the topic again?
Well, it was on simulations, whether we live in a simulated universe.
Ooh.
And artificial intelligence. I've given several talks on artificial intelligence, like at the IONS group in Richmond, and Jim had asked me to give a talk and try to. I want to relate it to Walter, and I'd met with Jim to see, since he knows so much about all of it, what did Walter say about simulations? I had picked out one thing myself earlier from a book, but he's going to talk. He would talk more about that. If I gave that talk, he would add a lot to it, I'm sure. But
well, why don't we do this? Let's look at the PowerPoint that Jim sent, and stay off mute with me, because between the two of us, we'll probably be able to tell why that slide was included. And then if we have time, we'll come back and hear what Walter Russell had to say about the Matrix.
Yep.
All right, so Katie, do you want to start the PowerPoint? Let's see what he sent. And I'm really worried about him. I mean, where is he? Because he was definitely communicating this afternoon. So your body is merely a machine made to express the thoughts that flow through you and nothing more. It is but an instrument for you to express your imagings, just as a piano is an instrument for a musician to express his imagings. Just as the piano is not the musician, so likewise your body is not you. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, Tom, you take it from here.
or anybody else.
Yeah, these were his drawings.
The science of the future is based upon God, the creator. God is light. God is mind. Okay.
This is how his books read. I, like Tom, have tackled them and most often come away perplexed. I'm getting ready to reread them. I'm thinking maybe I needed to mature a little spiritually, and I was going to try again.
Well, I like the bottom line. Science has built a strange universe from sense evidence and has been mightily deceived.
Yes. Yes. All right, let's go to the next one, Katie. He was very into the balancing of masculine and feminine energies. Can everybody read this for themselves, or would it be helpful if Tom or I read the captions?
I can read it okay.
Okay. So he's describing here, what I get from this, he's describing here how we manifest. And once we've merged, our abilities are endless. It's fascinating. Yeah, they had his diaries. Just a little more about the museum. So they've been keeping everything in storage and lovingly protecting these materials. And the museum opened, what, 2 years ago, Tom? We were at the grand opening. Mom and I went.
Yeah.
About 2 years. So the museum is incredible. It's in Waynesboro, and like there are letters between Russell and Einstein under glass. His artwork is there. Some of the busts. All right, let's keep going, Katie. You can count from 0 to 9. You can understand the secrets of the universe. Rhythm, balance, interchange. This reminds me a lot of the Kabbalion, the 7 laws of the universe and the Kabbalion. Okay, let's go to the next one. I don't know what that's a depiction of. We'll keep going. You know?
Well, it's dimensions.
Yeah, he's showing, he was talking about the 3 and 9. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's the okay. That's the poster that I got for Steve. That's hanging on his wall in his office. This is Russell's periodic chart.
Steve, explain that to us.
Yes, you look at it every day, honey. What is it? What does it mean? This is called. The title is the Russell Periodic Chart of the Elements #1.
It actually works exactly the same way the periodic charts that you're used to looking at are. If you, each one of those curves represents a group of like type elements at that particular level. And, you know, and they repeat themselves, you know, at higher molecular weights, essentially. And if you look at it, you can map it straight to the regular periodic table that you're used to seeing, and it works exactly the same way. I don't know why. I guess he felt the need to create a new one because it helped him to discover ones that were missing. The way that he thought about it was that each place on these curves at a certain distance, there should definitely be an element. And I guess some of them were missing at the time that he did it. But that's all. I don't know that much about it, but as far as a periodic table, it works just fine.
So Steve, the octave, is he thinking in dimension terms, or you know what he means?
Not necessarily dimensions, but I mean, if you look at the elements that are at each curve, the ones up at the top at the little curves are the light ones that only have a few proton, you know, like helium and hydrogen, yada yada, and they get heavier and heavier. But the order that they're in from the beginning of the curve to the end of the curve, it's the same kind of elements. It starts off with a salty one like potassium, and then it ends up with a metally one like selenium. You know, and in each group that repeats itself. Like if you go to the next room, then it goes from rubidium to iodine, same thing. So if you pick out an area of the curve, depending on what you'll find that type of element, and it just depends on the molecular weight of which curve you're on is what elements you're going to be looking at.
So you think that when he mapped it this way, he could tell there were elements that hadn't been discovered yet? I
do not know that for a fact, but that is my guess. I don't see any other reason to do this, to be honest with you. I think he was saying to himself, there should be things like you see, for example, at the bottom there where it says unknown. I bet you that's not unknown now.
I remember reading that 1 or 2 of the ones he identified have yet to be officially added to the periodic table.
I don't know. People say all kinds of stuff about Walter Russell, but I think pretty much all the ones that he knew about are on there now. But anyway, to answer your original question, that is my guess. My guess is that he did this so that he could put all the ones that everybody knew about on there, and then he could say, okay, there's got to be one here. I'm going to go find it.
Fascinating. Okay, well, let's keep going, Katie. Thinking, knowing, thinking. I wish Jim were here to explain this one.
It looks like a terrible headache.
Stop. I don't know, positive electric or negative. Okay, keep going, Katie, please. Oh, he was definitely going to tell us a story because we're coming back to this drawing. Was that it, Katie? Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. Yep.
Tom, is there anything in your presentation you want to pull out? And then we'll open the circle up. What time is it? It's 7:30. Is there anything else you would like to add? And then we could start sharing how it feels to be in the presence of a genius even after he's passed, because he was incredible.
Okay, oh, okay, this is the second slide. And I think in the museum, I think I have this in there really, because in the museum, this original drawing of his is there, and there is an explanation of it. But really, the reason, I guess the real reason I put it in was, see this pointer that he's using? That's the pointer that I saw in the dream. And, you know, he was hitting my forehead with it and telling me to pay attention. I guess I was being a little dense. And he's probably still thinking that, I don't know. Okay, let's see. Okay, I can't read all of that. Let me.
This is good stuff. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, it's being blocked by, I've got to change it so this isn't being shown off on the side. What do I do to that? Hide the video panel. There we go. This is a quote from Walter Russell. It is also important to realize, it's a quote from a book, as Dr. Russell taught, that the relative universe of apparent stability, which is really in constant change, is ephemeral and illusory. Well, that's why I picked that out, because I'm trying to show, does he reference this being a simulation, an illusion at all? Okay, I'll go on. Stability only exists in the one static universe of God's magnetic white light. There, all that exists is eternal, omnipresent, and omnipotent. This is in the wave lies the secret of creation. That wave slide we saw before with all the rainbow colors, that's the wave he's talking about. Okay, so this is, I have it because there's some reference to this not being perhaps the whole reality. And
What was the one before this, Tom? There was a slide before this that also, right before that one. Yeah, this one. Can you read that one, please?
I'm missing the upper right-hand corner there, where the screen is.
Okay. It says that which man calls matter or substance has no existence whatsoever.
Yeah, I can read the rest. So-called matter is but waves of the motion of light, electrically divided into opposed pairs, then electrically conditioned and patterned into what we call various substances of matter. Briefly put, matter is but the motion of light, and motion is not substance. It only appears to be. Take motion away, and there would not be even the appearance of substance. Electricity manufactures all of the qualities and attributes of light in wave motion, which we think of as substance. So the motion creates an image in our minds, I believe is what he's saying, because, you know, you can read books now, certainly from quantum physicists, and at least those who are thinking beyond their science, and say, you know, nothing really exists. It's all in our minds. And perhaps this is what Russell was figuring out, that the motion is interpreted in our minds as matter. So that's why I have that there.
That's great. Keep going. This is good stuff.
Okay, the cube and the sphere are the sole working tools of creation. Every wave is a sphere. I have that there because I was writing a book in 1992, beginning to write a book. I had just been to the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro as a representative, and I was back writing. It was a very spiritual experience there for many people, and I was just starting to write about that. And a voice in my head said, use flatland. Flatland. Flatland is a book written by Edwin Abbott in the 1880s, who was a mathematician, about a sphere intersecting a plane. And there were people who live in the plane, people meaning squares and triangles and circles, that their real existence is the sphere beyond the plane, but they don't know it. They're trapped in this plane. So that's why I picked this out that Russell had talked about, because he focuses on the sphere and the cube, but the sphere especially, as a source of the creation that we see. Even every wave is a sphere, and he'll have drawings of them moving around and intersecting each other. And that's the kind of thing I have in a very simple form in the book that I wrote at that time. So that's why I have it there, so I could talk more about that. And all right. Oh, okay. I think I've left Walter Russell for a minute. This is Edwin Abbott, the mathematician in England in 1882, who wrote the book Flatland. Some of you probably have heard of Flatland or seen video versions of that, but I have him in there.
I always wondered what those triangles would do if they knew the truth.
Wait, what's coming up there, Tom? I saw a pentagon.
Well, this is Edwin Abbott's book. Yes, you see a pentagon.
You know how I feel about pentagons.
Yeah, right. Well, it's a romance of many dimensions written by a square. So he creates this whole, I'm talking about Edwin Abbott now. He creates a whole society on this flat plane that is being impacted by spheres, and they themselves are spheres, but they don't know it. So it's kind of like a matrix book, that we're caught in a matrix and we don't
I remember reading this in college. I had to read this in one of my classes, and it was fascinating.
Yeah, it is. I was introduced to it in the late 60s. I was at Columbia University getting a master's degree in math ed, and I heard about it. And then a couple of years later, I was teaching math in a private school, and I spent one day teaching about Flatland, and it happened to be a day when I was being observed by my supervisor. And at the end of the day, she said, if you do that again, you're fired. So Flatland has, for many people, it doesn't seem to be about mathematics. It's more about society. And
it's kind of like reading Animal Farm, Orwell's Animal Farm. Yeah, there's a whole other level of metaphysical stuff seeping into your brain as you read it. Yeah, it's a cool book.
So I recommend that book, but it doesn't have anything to do with Walter Russell, except I think, there's the sphere and the plane, by the way. That's a drawing in my book that I had an artist do. But I want to get to, the reason I keep going here is I've got something else about, okay, this is a quote from Dr. Timothy Binder, the president of Walter Russell's University in 1995. I believe it is important to realize that perfect cubes, tetrahedrons, spheres, and cones do not exist in the relative universe except possibly for an instant in time. They only exist perfectly in the absolute universe. They are abstractions. So what does that mean? I don't know. Anybody?
Yeah, anybody want to take a crack at that? And if anybody wants to stop at any point and throw out some thoughts, please do. I mean, that's the purpose of this salon.
It's another way of expressing the concept of an image of, absolute perfection doesn't exist anywhere except as a concept. I mean, there's a lot of different ways this has been said. And I don't know if it's true or not, and I never will.
Plato said it too, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
With the cave and yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But I like to use it because, you know, like many of you, I'm sure, you know, we're not just these bodies. I mean, we know that we're spirit, whatever word we want to use, and this is just a representation, not a very good representation probably, of the oneness and the love and the truth and the light that we really are. But we're here to do what we can with what is manifested. But I think this is saying the same thing in a different way. And Walter Russell said that a lot of different ways. This is a sign that's in the museum by the Mark Twain Memorial. I have learned something of that electric principle which motivates this universe. And because of that discovery of the electric nature of all material things which unfold from the spiritual idea of those things in space, I was enabled to do that monument. This is Walter explaining how he could do this Mark Twain Memorial, which has what, Laura, maybe
Yeah. Do you have a picture? Do you have a picture of it? I would love for them to see the Mark Twain Memorial.
I don't think I do, because I give it in their space and it's right there. So,
Katie, can you find it on the internet and we'll show them? He's very famous for this sculpture. It goes on and on, like Joan of Arc is in it, and Huckleberry Finn is in there, and yeah, he loved Mark Twain because, as I mentioned earlier, Twain befriended him when he was still a young man. All right, so Katie will probably be able to find it. We'll show it at the end. Keep going, Tom.
yeah, so the reason I have this slide in there is because he says the discovery of the electrical nature of all material things, so positive and negative. That's what our material universe is, made up of opposites. And, you know, there are many spiritual teachings who talk about that's where we are. We're in this space of opposites, but that's not who we are. You know, we are part of the oneness where there aren't the opposites. And I think that's what Walter Russell was saying in different ways. And this is one of the times I'm thinking he's referring to that. And I think, oh yeah, and here's a big one for me that Walter Russell said, because I've been trying to, in different ways, you know, give talks and write about this being a simulation that we live in. The Matrix has created something that we think is real, but it's not the truth. It's not real. It's just part of it. So here's, I think, his way of saying that. The created, he has it in quotes because he's saying it's not really created by God, by one consciousness. But anyway, the created universe that we live in is but an electric record of the universal consciousness expressed repetitively or reproductively through form images. The created universe that we live in is but an electric record using opposites, plus and minus, of the universal consciousness, which doesn't have those opposites maybe, expressed repetitively like a fractal, perhaps, or reproductively through form images. So I was going to use that with some other of my own slides later in that longer talk to show that quantum physics is coming to, many of the scientists are coming to the same conclusion, that this is not, the electric universe is, that we experience is not reality. It is an illusion, it is a simulation. Now, if it's a simulation with positive and negative elements to it, that's how it's formed, and it behaves like the simulations that we have on our computers, is it possible that the creator of this simulation is a computer? Is AI actually the creator of what we experience when you look out the window and every day right here? And it's not our true selves, and it's not true reality. So I think that's what Walter Russell was getting at. And maybe it's what he was getting at in that dream when he pointed the pointer and said, the two systems are isotopes of each other. Okay, well, that's why I have that. But there's a lot of There's a lot of science that can go behind this statement that we know now, quantumly, that supports this being a simulation, a computer simulation. I used to think that my thinking occurred within my body, but I found that this was not true. And this is, so where is he going to? He's thinking outside of his body, which would be maybe what we call his true self, his true mind, part of universal mind. Maybe he could tap into that. Maybe that's what he's saying.